Turn them on. Are they on? Are we good now? Oh, they were coming in, so something's good. We good? You guys can speak. Okay.
Hi.
Is this working now? No. What?
You're on.
It's probably recording. I just don't think you're on.
So they can hear it, but people in the room can't.
No, it's not. It's not mic'd out here. It's just mic'd.
Oh, okay.
Oh. This is
Gotcha.
going to be really awkward then.
Yeah, that's right.
All right, we'll give it a whirl. Thanks, everybody, for being at the second Tiger Cage mentoring event. Before we get going, I want to point out and acknowledge Jillian, who is basically our point of contact in getting your teams going and making sure you're going down the true and honest path. What's the best way for folks to get in touch with you?
If you attended the Launch Mixer, I have that list of email addresses, so I've been pushing out emails to those, but I have a sign-in sheet here for everybody who's here. If you haven't signed in, if you do that for me, that would help a lot, and give me your email address, and I will reach out to you. There also is a website, harbert.auburn.edu/tiger-cage. I can write it on the board later. There's more information there. But the best way is to sign up on the sheet, and then I'll reach out to you, and you'll have my contact information.
Awesome.
Okay.
All right, so today we're going to talk about creating an effective business plan, and we're really privileged to have Brian Connolly speaking to us. He's the McWane Family Professor of Management. And you may not know this, but Auburn is currently trying to figure out some new teaching awards to create. There's a problem in that Brian has earned every one offered on campus. And so we need to have new ones, so Brian has a goal to shoot towards.
Thank you.
But seriously, he's won a ton of teaching awards, awesome speaker, and he's going to talk for a few minutes. He teaches our business plan class and has gleaned a lot of insights from that. After that, we're going to have a panel with Lou Bufano, who used to be an executive with IBM. He's now very involved in the entrepreneurship activities in Austin, Texas, and San Jose. And we'll also have Cami Baker fielding questions. She's an associate professor in the Department of Management here and has a pretty extensive background in business as well. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Brian.
Thank you, Dave. I'm just going to set this aside if that's all right. How long do you think it takes to do one lap around the Indianapolis Speedway? Any guesses?
Driving?
Driving. I thought that was implied. Professional driver.
So 200 miles an hour?
Yeah. Professional driver, Indy 500 car.
45 seconds.
40. She's pretty good. Probably a little less than a minute or so. How long do you think it would take to do the same thing in a limousine with a chauffeur? Probably about 4-5 minutes. There's a business plan competition where the finalists get to go into a limousine with a chauffeur and pitch their idea. But they have to do it by the time they finish one lap around the Indianapolis 500 Speedway. So you got to elucidate your idea in about 4 or 5 minutes. If you don't have a plan and you can't clearly and purposefully elucidate that plan, you are sunk. Well, that's what we want to talk about today, is to give you some of the tools in your toolbox as you help develop a plan. I see so often people will start a business, and what happens is they get this idea, and they start taking the first step and the second step, and they don't get around to the plan. But by the time they're 10 steps into it, it's too late to bother with the plan because they're so busy with the business, right? And so the plan never happens. And what happens then is they're putting the cart before the horse, right? So today we're going to talk to you about how to get that turned around. When I'm talking about a business plan, I'm really talking about like a 25-page document. These things, there's a lot of tools available on the web about how to write a business plan, and you'll see some of those tools listed up here. And there are other mechanisms. Sometimes people will talk about a pitch deck, which in my opinion is really just a PowerPoint version of a business plan. Sometimes people will talk about summary business plans, which are 10 pages, or operational business plans, which are more like 100 pages. But what we're talking about today is really the standard 25-page business plan that you would present to a group of venture capitalist or a bank or lending agency, an angel investor. Why would you write these things? Well, you know, in my business plans class, I had one entrepreneur come in, and I told him it was a business plans class, and I asked him to talk about his business plan. And he came in, and he spent the whole hour saying why you don't need a business plan. Right? Oh, it was horrible. And afterwards, I had to tell the students, look, this guy, he's 6'4", impossibly good-looking, former professional football player. And he was starting a business to a social networking website for former professional football players. Well, if you're doing that, then maybe you can fly by the seat of your pants, right? But for the rest of us that don't ooze charm like this guy, we got to have a plan, and especially when we're trying to talk to potential investors, or even if we're gonna hire people, if we're gonna have people working for us. You know, we want them to know what is our vision, and how do they fit into that plan. Potential partners, a business plan can give them an element, give your business and your idea an element of legitimacy. You know, it can make it a little more tangible for people that you might want to partner with, and certainly potential investors. You want to be able to answer for potential investors, you know, what gap will you fill? How are you going to fill it? And how are you going to make money filling that gap? So I've seen a lot of business plans in my day, and a lot of them are really bad. And so what I decided to do today was to give you some keys to ineffective business plans. Now, the first key to an ineffective business plan is to obfuscate. Right? You want to be really unclear. Of course, what I'm getting at here is that you want to have, you want to be able to answer the question, what is your value proposition? Very simply, very clearly, the most important aspect of a business plan. Spend half your time here. If you can't answer that question very simply and clearly, you're in trouble. I was teaching the business plans class recently, and the student is not here, so I think I can tell this story. One of the students all developed business plans, and one of them, initially their idea was they were trying to develop this plan around. I asked them what it was about, and they said, we want to make printers available to people, and they'll be outside like a Walmart or CVS. So people that don't have printers can print. That's a horrible idea. You know, what's the value proposition of providing printers? I mean, how many people that can afford a computer can't afford a printer? So really, they just couldn't clearly articulate their value proposition. Contrast that with my kids when we moved here, and you know, we went to the first Auburn game, and we were walking like miles. All right, we didn't know where to park, so we were walking so far. And we talked about, gee, well, why don't they have, you know, get some high schoolers to start my kids grew up in Asia, and so they said, start up a little rickshaw program where you throw something on the back of a bicycle, and now you just pedal around and give people rides to the stadium, and then you drop them off and you go get somebody else. You can charge $10 a head, and for every game you can make, you know, $100 or $200, and you know, how much cost is there in that? I mean, just power bars basically, so you can pedal hard enough. That has a real clear value proposition. Simple, and gee, my kids are 12 years old. By the way, there's some online resources on all of these slides, and they're oriented toward the particular problem that I'm mentioning that we overcome. And so these slides, you don't even need to write them down. I'm going to make these slides available through Jillian on the Tiger Cage website, so you'll be able to get them there. The next thing you want to do is ignore. Right? Ignore what's happening in the industry. Here, of course, what you're trying to get at is who are you selling to and why, understanding the opportunities and the threats that are out there and that are driving your business idea. I think a great example here is, if you've ever seen the show Shark Tank, one of this guy, he had the funniest presentation. He took his computer and he says, you know, what's valuable on this computer? And he takes it and he throws it to the side. And he lands and it crashes, breaks his computer. And his whole idea was to back up data onto the cloud. And one of the Shark Tank guys, Mr. Wonderful, Kevin O'Leary, if you know him, he says, you know you can do that already. And you know what it costs? It's free. So, you really don't want to ignore what's out there already. It's very important that you understand what's available and how you're providing something different. The next thing you can do is overestimate yourself or underestimate others. Here, you're answering the question, how are you filling this gap in a valuable and meaningful way for a particular market segment? Really, I think a nice tool here that sometimes we talk about in our strategy classes is you can ask, is your value proposition valuable, rare, inimitable, and non-substitutable? All right, let me just give you an example of this. You saw the Auburn game last week, right? And Nick Marshall's pass to Sammy Coates. How many times did you see that replayed? And when they replayed it, they showed Sammy's great catch. But what was amazing was Nick Marshall. When he was throwing that ball, it was just kind of a nonchalant little whoop, and it went 60 yards in the air. That guy can throw a ball 60 yards in the air easily. That's valuable. That provides competitive advantage for a team. Now, is it rare? If there's 100 guys in Alabama that can go whoop and throw the ball 60 yards in the air, that's not rare. All right, so that's not going to provide competitive advantage anymore. You got to have an idea that's valuable and rare. It needs to be inimitable, right? If you got a guy that can throw 60 yards in the air, and there's not many guys in Alabama that can do that, but you turn somebody over that's moderately athletic to Rhett Lashley, and in a week or two he can show them how to do that and spin the ball that way, then now it's imitable, right? It's something that you can copy. So if it's going to provide competitive advantage, it's got to be valuable, rare, inimitable, and non-substitutable. Okay, non-substitutable is, all right, so you got Nick Marshall. So he can throw the ball in the air 60 yards. Well, you know what? I got a guy. He can't throw the ball in the air, but if I hand him the ball, he runs 25 yards every time. I don't need Nick Marshall. I don't need to throw the ball 60 yards in the air because I'm getting 25 yards of play. Right? So your value proposition needs to be valuable, rare, inimitable, and non-substitutable. Here, you're looking at who are your competitors. What do they sell? How much market do they have? What are the barriers to entry? By the way, on barriers to entry, a quick note. No barriers to entry. A lot of people think, I can get in this business really easy. It won't cost me anything. That's not necessarily a good thing. Because if you can get into it really easily, so can everybody else. All right? So you're looking at the barriers to entry as well. And you're thinking about indirect competitors. And so you don't want to overestimate yourself. You apply the VRIN. And you don't want to underestimate what others can do. The next thing you want to do is be wide-eyed. Kind of like Don Knotts. You guys don't remember him, but he couldn't do anything. He put on a uniform, but he never really did much of anything. This is all about not knowing how you're going to convert your resources into a good or a service. So this last semester, I was teaching this business plans class, and these guys, no, they're not in here either. Their idea was to have an email system where it's kind of an exploding email system. So you get an email, and you can tell it when it's going to explode, so that it automatically deletes itself. Now that's a great idea. And in fact, there's some new services coming on board like that. Unfortunately, when you start asking them questions about how they're going to implement, they don't have the foggiest idea. All they've done is identified something that they'd like, right? But they don't know how they're going to implement that. Well, you can't just have something that you'd like. I'd like a dog that doesn't poop in the yard and doesn't shed. But, you got to feed a dog. Right? And so you got to identify how you're going to convert your resources into a good or service, not just a need that's out there. The next key to ineffectiveness is throw money at problems. Right? Here you're not sure how to get customers. Let's do some radio and TV and billboards. Let's get those things are really expensive. Right? So you need to be creative in your business plan. A lot of folks will forget about the fact that you can be really creative in marketing, as we were talking about. He's got an idea. Chris is one of our mentors. He's got an idea where he's going to be really creative in marketing with, can I tell him? porta potties. Yeah, if you want to know more about that, talk to Chris. So those that are really creative are you need to use guerrilla tactics, and you need to think about your dollars here like you've earned them through manual labor, right? So you're not just throwing money at, we're just going to do a bunch of TV so we can get customers. Act as though you've earned those dollars so that you can be more creative about getting customers. And then the last key to ineffectiveness is to guess. Just kind of have your head in the clouds. This is 1/3 of my undergraduate business plan proposals. They get to their projections, and you just see this linear line. Market's going to grow at 8% a year, and within 5 years you're going to have a $12 million business. That's great, but you know what? Investors are going to see through that in a heartbeat. They're never going to believe. They will not let you get away with irrational exuberance with respect to what's happening in the marketplace. They don't give a flying patootie about what you think. When you say, we think the market's going to grow, at this percent for the next 5 years. No, not unless you can provide them with information that they don't have about why the market's going to grow, why those things are going to happen. All right, so you need to be able to back up your projections. Projections are great. I'm not saying not to have a 3-year or 5-year projection, but projections that based upon just having your head in the clouds and not based on facts, that's going to hurt you more than it helps you. Okay, so those are the keys to ineffectiveness. Now, if you think about those, the solution to those things, put those solutions together, and you have the 6 key chapters of a business plan. Okay, so you don't obfuscate. Well, that means you start with a vision and a mission. And that's where I said you got to spend half your time. This is what drives all of this. This is your value proposition stated simply and clearly. You don't ignore. Well, this is chapter 2 of your business plan, and that is the market opportunity. Right? And here's where you're talking about opportunities and threats that exist. What's happening in society, in the marketplace. Next is, don't overestimate yourself or underestimate competitors. This is an industry analysis, the next chapter of your business plan, where here you're looking at key customer segments, key partnerships that you might have. If you map this against the business canvas on the tiger cage, you'll see customer segments and partnerships are right here. Now, don't be wide-eyed. Here, we're talking about having a chapter dedicated to operations. Right? Here, this is going to tell you how you convert your resources into goods and services. And also in here is where you justify your team, which is such an important factor. So much of the investment decision is based upon understanding the competence and ability of the team. And so you're justifying why your team is appropriate for making that conversion into goods and services that people want. In the business model canvas on Tiger Cage, this is key activities, key resources, channels of distribution. Don't throw money. And this is the next aspect of your business plan, is a marketing plan. And here in the business canvas model, they're talking about customer relationships, understanding how you're going to get customers, how you're going to maintain customers. And then don't guess. And the way you overcome that is the last chapter of your business plan, which is a financial plan. And here in the business canvas model of Tiger Cage, they talk about the cost structure and the revenue streams. So that's where you identify very clearly, and not with your head in your clouds, but with some at least some information to try to back up why you think this market is going to grow. So that's the 6 main sections of any good business plan. And with that, I'd like to invite my esteemed guests down for a question and answer session. So, Cammie and Lou, I have some chairs for us, and maybe we can, for the recording's sake, we can pass this around. And so we have a few minutes. How long do you want to spend on this?
Maybe another 20 minutes or so.
All right, so the next hour and a half is for, next 15, 20 minutes will be just some questions about, we'll try to stick to the topic of business plans, but man, you got a resource right here. He's seen more business plans than you can imagine. And so,
we let them talk briefly about
I think
anything
that's a
they'd like
great
to
idea.
offer.
That's a great idea. You guys want to talk?
I retired from IBM about a year and a half ago, and the last 15 years that I was there, I did mergers and acquisitions work. So the division I was in would look at maybe 250 to 300 proposals a year, and we would decide to buy 1 to 3 companies out of that. So pretty narrow funnel. What I'm doing now is some consulting work out in California for a private equity firm that's doing acquisitions of different companies, either startups or spin-outs from larger companies. So I would just like to say that the advice Brian gave you, Dr. Connolly gave you, is very good advice. When we would take a proposal forward inside IBM, it might be a transaction that was going to require $600 million of investment. We had about 2 laps around the track
Wow.
to tell our story, and then about another 10 minutes to answer questions. It was not uncommon to have 20 to 30 minutes to make a decision like that.
Wow.
When I was evaluating inbound proposals, the biggest thing missing by most people presenting was what was in it for me, for my company. They would talk about their business plan and how they were going to make money, but they never spent time talking about why that proposal would be beneficial to me. In that case, it was a company they were talking to. If you're trying to secure funds, you're talking to private investors, either angels or venture capital firms that are going to spend some money. So you have to convince them why spending their money with you is a better use of their funds than spending it with someone else, and why the risk level of dealing with you is better than the risk level of dealing with someone else. And to the point that Dr. Connolly made, why your solution or proposal is unique enough to justify them spending that money. You don't want to, this barriers to entry question or innovation question. So just my perspective and a little bit of my background.
Hello, I've been at Auburn here 6 years, and prior to coming to Auburn, I worked at 3M, and I did product marketing. I was a business team leader, and so it was kind of a different type of entrepreneurship, more corporate entrepreneurship, and so we got, I was really involved in product development, and so we did the pitch too. We're going to go up through, and if we took you 2 laps, we probably had 3. I mean, we had a lot longer time, and corporate is a lot slower. But just to kind of add on to some of the things that Dr. Connolly said, I mean, one of the things that when you're doing your business plan, you want to make sure you remember that it's not a data dump. We sit here and we say, 25 pages, like, I got 25 pages just to put a whole lot of stuff down, but we want it to be good stuff. We don't want to know just all the facts and figures. We want it to be meaningful data. And so you want to communicate brilliantly, and so that it really wows the people, but also shows that you know the right information that needs to be in that business plan, and it's not just everything you found on the internet. The other thing, just to kind of add on, is you want to make sure that you think about the end when you're developing that plan. So you want to have that end in mind. And so where do you want to be 5 years from now? And so when you think about where you want to be 5 years from now, well, how do I get there? And then so if you can clearly communicate how to get there, or that you can communicate that you know the resources you need, that you know what to do, I mean, that says a lot to those people that are wanting to invest in your company. So you know the things that you need to do, and you know how to go about getting those resources. And those things are important. So you want to make sure that you communicate, you know what you're doing. So if you're asking for $10 million, $5 million, or even $50,000, I want to make sure that it's getting put to good use. I mean, so those are some other things to add on, and just kind of open it up for questions.
Anyone? Okay, we'll start in the back. And then
So do you recommend using an organization like the Small Business Association to go over your business plan, or do you recommend having a pretty strong business plan when you go to an organization like that?
I think it depends on your proposal, but my advice would be to find somebody to mentor you. there are a lot of forums where you can find a mentor. You'll have a lot of connections through the university. The professors can help point you to graduates or people they know, but I would say find a great mentor, and then
So you
listen to
recommend
their
having-
advice.
You recommend having your business plan finished before you graduated then?
It all depends on what you're trying to do and how long it takes to do it. I would say you can't take forever to pull together a business plan, but you also don't want to, be premature in trying to raise money or get your plan out there. This sounds like kind of a iffy answer to your question, but it does depend on what your proposal is and how much money you're trying to get and how much risk is involved.
Thank you.
I guess to add on to it, I mean, when you make that pitch and you're asking for money and somebody gives you the money, well then we want you to be ready to do something with it. We don't want, like, why give it to you and then you say, wait, I still got to do some more research. I mean, so just make sure that the timing is appropriate.
So these 6 points, that's what's going to fill up the whole 25 pages that you were talking about earlier?
Yeah. Those. I mean, when you look at chapters of business plans, there's very little deviation. Usually kind of those 6, and so that's you want to stick with those because that's what investors are expecting. And so the more you deviate from that, the more explaining you have to do.
You got to be flexible. I would have situations where somebody wanted to present a business plan, and we'd have a call scheduled, but I had to be somewhere, and I'd be in the car, and I'd say, look, I can spend the half hour that we had scheduled, but I'm in the car, so I can't see your charts. I'll look at them later. Go. And you have to be able to explain your plan without any charts, but that's a good list of elements to have. I mean, it's very comprehensive. The other thing you need to be prepared for is somebody gives you an hour of their time or half an hour of their time, and they're late. And they have something on the back end, so you have to be able to do everything in 5 or 10 minutes.
Yeah, what a great point.
You have to have, you call it the laps around the track, you have to have your elevator speech or the Cliff's Notes version or the comic book version of your story, whatever you want to call it. You'll be all geared up and you will have prepared for this, but the person you're talking to is probably somebody that's very busy, and this is just a time slice out of their day. And you've got to be ready to deal with whatever they're dealing with. They can come into the meeting grumpy because the last meeting they were in was a bad meeting. And, they're people, human beings, they're not able to switch over immediately to this is a fresh topic and a different person. So,
Did somebody have their hand up over here? Yeah.
Well, you expressed that it's definitely important to emphasize what's in it for the investor. But for all three of you, would you say that there's a sort of hierarchy in these 6 points? Is there one thing that we would emphasize over another? And then again, does that...
No, you got to touch on everything.
Right. And it might depend on who you're talking to as well and what they're more geared to? Or?
You can do a lot of research on the background of the person you're talking to. You can look them up on Facebook. You can Google them. You can learn who your audience is. Either all of the people, if it's multiple people, or one person.
Kind of along those same lines, you mentioned what you see most commonly missing, but what in your experience of looking at business plans and everything has been something that consistently makes a business plan stand out and you say, wow, like the way that they put that together, or the focus on this is what makes it stand out?
I wo't say 2 things. One is passion. You can't come in and say, I'm here to talk about my idea for a $10 million investment. That's kind of a turn on. And then I think probably the second thing is really to help that person understand why it's a good investment for them. I think too many times people come in with what is in it for me and not what is in it for you and me. And they forget to do that here.
And just to add on, I would say those plans that really show a clear demonstration that they understand the competitors. A lot of times we think that we have the next great thing, but we don't give any credit to those competitors. And so you want to show that you understand that market that you're going into, what some of the obstacles are. And I need to make sure I illustrate or demonstrate that I know the capabilities of my competitors, and even try to predict what you think that they were going to do and how your product will still withstand some of the things that they may, try to challenge you with in the market as far as their resources or knowing what their capabilities are, so that you can show that your competitive advantage or your value proposition won't be short-lived. That that you may have a 3-year window of opportunity, but then also showing that you know that customer, you know what their needs are. Showing that that product is a good fit, and you kind of done your homework. I mean, that's kind of the thing, and your numbers are realistic. I think also when you look at those numbers, we want to make sure they're realistic and that you clearly state the assumptions that you're making. I mean, a lot of people, Dr. Conley mentioned, we talk about going from here to here in 2 years, and it's like, wait a minute, no other company has done that. Now, how are you going to do that? How is it that you're going to do something that no one else has done in the past? So I think being realistic and making sure that your assumptions are clear and you kind of have those things down.
We used to talk about two things. That somebody would come in with the story that all trees grow straight to heaven, or their revenue plan was what we would call a hockey stick. It starts out in about 2 months, it goes like that.
Right. Yeah.
The other piece of advice I'd give you back to, me saying there's a couple things you should pay attention to. If you can practice telling your story without the charts, then the charts are supporting material to you telling your story. And that gets to the passion point I was talking about. You can stand up there without anything and tell your story, and you know the numbers and you know everything up here.
And just real quick, and don't overstate the industry that you're competing in. I mean, actually make sure you focus on the industry you're in and not the big one just to get big numbers. I think that's important.
Hold on 1 second.
I'm done.
There you go.
All right, what are you going to say?
Especially with your experience with IBM, is there anything that we should add to the business plan for anything like technology related?
A lot of business plans are too focused on technology and not on the other things that you need to worry about. How you're going to go to market, and how you're going to sell the product, what your routes to market are, what your marketing approach is going to be, how you're going to use social media, all those things. And to the point you made, you need to know the customer problems you're going to be solving. Here's a solution. Now all I need is the problem to go with it. You want to be talking about the customer pain point and why they're going to spend money over alternative choices that they have on something like this as opposed to something else.
So, but would you recommend putting in, like, let's say you're using a technology that uses like lasers or communication stuff with safety regulations and guidelines and stuff?
Yeah, sure.
Would you recommend putting in a piece into your business plan that demonstrates how you plan on meeting these regulations and
Yeah,
requirements?
if you need regulatory approval, you put that in. I would say that this is a great guideline to a business plan, but you have to tailor it to your situation. You got to cover all the elements, but you have to cover it in a way that tells the story. And there are a lot of different ways to tell the story. You got to tell it your way and specific to your situation. I'm not a big fan of templates. In a big corporation, there was always the tendency to say, when you're coming up with a proposal to acquire a company, here are the charts you need to have. I used to tell my staff, that's a guideline. Please don't be a blind slave to that. Tell the story. Because in the end, it was us in there telling the story, not the guy on the corporate staff that was giving us the template that we had to fill out. So feel comfortable enough to tell the story in a way that hits these points, but deals with what you have to deal with. You made a point. You've got to, if you have a proposal that needs regulatory approval, you need to deal with how you're going to get that approval, how long it's going to take, why you're confident you'll get it. Other proposals may not need that.
Let's come back and we'll come back to your question. Just before we do, I want to drop back to your question about what makes for a great business proposal. Were you going to add something to that?
I was just going to say that they brought up a lot of important issues that you need to cover. Well, I think this will work. Okay. But it's almost impossible for the individual or group of people who's creating the plan to assess those things themselves. Yeah. I mean, everybody thinks their kids are beautiful. Yeah. And, a lot of them aren't. So I'll give you an example, not of an ugly kid, but Cami and I were part of oh God, I hate seeing myself up there. Cami and I were part of this group that had to vet business plans for folks who were seeking funding. And after a while, it became apparent that LaCami was like the business plan assassin. If there was a flaw in somebody's business plan, she was out there with like a machine gun finding it, and we would not fund those proposals. This is wonderful. Tell me how it's going to make money. So it occurred to me at the time, if these people just had like a half an hour with her or somebody like her, they could have dealt with that flaw and had a much better chance of getting the funding. So it's hard to stress enough. Get at least one mentor who knows what they're doing to go through your material, and possibly more than one person, maybe somebody at a different stage of life, somebody in their 20s, somebody in their 50s. They're going to have different sets of experience to bring to your plan.
Just to add to your point, we used to a lot of times do what we called green team, red team. And I'd take a piece of my staff and say, you're the red team. I want you to attack this thing. Same point. If you can practice anticipating objections that you're going to hear and answering them, and you get somebody that, you want your red team exercise to be worse than the presentation you're going to be making for the money.
So a devil's advocate.
You need a devil's advocate. Another way to.
Oh, and then we'll come here. All right, I promise you.
So would you say that there's such thing as being too creative when formulating or presenting business plans? Like, how creative do you think you can get when talking to investors and presenting your business plan?
How creative can you get?
Yes.
I guess the answer is, I don't know.
Yeah, I come back to the notion of the story.
Yeah. If you can tell the story.
Yeah, and you're kind of looking for that aha from the potential. Let's assume you're talking about the potential investor. You don't want to go off the scale to where you're doing a skit or wearing costumes, because then you're just going to turn them off, right? So you're trying to not distract from your aha moment, from your value proposition.
I think it gets back to know your audience.
Yeah.
But you got to be careful getting too hokey or dyeing your hair red or something, or green.
Right. So we had a question up here.
I think you had a comment.
Yeah, more of a comment. A lot of this I'm going to talk about when I talk about pitches in a couple weeks at Tiger Cage session. But one of the things in business plans, I've judged a lot, probably 100 business plan and pitch competitions. And one of the things that he was commenting on earlier that kind of gets diced in with the rest of this is buzzwords, disruptive, innovative, thought leader, all those kinds of things that are the groovy kind of words that you're supposed to put in or you think that you're supposed to put into pitches, pitch decks, and business plans. And they really just make you look like an idiot if you're not really disrupting or really shaking up something. So people that are looking at business plans are typically looking at a lot of them, especially in the case of the Tiger Cage or any competition like it. And my suggestion in your business plan is be real and as hardcore with the facts as you possibly can be, without dressing it up with the latest mumbo jumbo talk that you find on the internet.
Just to add to that,
gonna go viral.
It's going to go viral.
I never thought PowerPoint presentations where things flew in from the left and the top and the bottom and the right made a lot of sense, because if I was traveling, I'd have my assistant print the presentation out, and so all of that was lost, or overlays and everything like that. The other thing I'd say is, be sure you don't have to have fancy PowerPoints, but be sure you don't have misspellings. Be sure that you're consistent with the style. Don't make it look like 27 charts got pulled from somewhere else and stuck together. Have it be a presentation that the person listening to or watching it feels like you created it just for them. And if enough is at stake, that's what you did do. You didn't grab something else and add a few odds and ends to it.
We'll take one more question.
Going back to the question around like a technology-based product, would you ever say that it's okay, like if you're not done with R&D, how do you get around like not having all the answers? Is that ever a possibility, like especially with more of a competition like this, that is it ever okay to not have all the answers?
Yeah.
So
I mean, if you don't know,
how do you
say
get
it.
around that? Like, do
Be
you
careful. You can only say that so many times, and somebody says,
And it
well,
comes to
he doesn't know the mark. He doesn't know what he's
premature.
talking about yet. It's
You don't want to see
premature.
funding too early.
Gotcha.
You don't have. One more
I
question.
have one
She's got her
question
hand
for
raised
you.
so high.
So back to the piece about the creative question. We're first-year MBAs, and we just recently had a class where it was said that as a company, instead of focusing on your vision and your mission, you really have to focus in on your core values. So with that being said, do you want to take your core values of your company and incorporate that into your business plan, or do you want to kind of mask it as a traditional vision or mission statement?
I think it's fair to talk about the core values of your company if it's a startup or whatever it is.
Especially if it's central to your value proposition.
Yeah. I think you'd have typically somebody will have a chart that says, here's our vision and our strategy, and here are the values. I wouldn't spend a lot of time on it, though, because most good companies have good proposals have good core values. So, once you get through that, then, okay, what is it that you're going to do with the money?
There's a notion, too, of just saying that you have these values doesn't help a whole lot, because nobody's going to put up a slide or talk about their bad values, right? And so trying to signal that in other ways, like partnering with someone who has a known set of values or something like that can be useful. All right. I'm sorry.
Well, if I can comment on that too, and Brian's going to shoot me for saying this too, comes back to the not having a business plan concept. But after has anybody read Simon Sinek's Start With Why book? He basically talks about Apple, and Apple have a really strong why, how, and what. And I've actually switched to using that as a method instead of a vision and mission statement now. I mean, I think why, how, what is much more powerful as far as what you're doing, and especially in a business plan. So, I mean, the vision and mission can be very, flaky sometimes too. You look at some of these companies; they're not very clear. Whereas your why, how, what clarifies some things. So,
I think it all gets down to there are a million ways to
I
tell
use
the
them. I
story,
use the vein. Why, how, what.
and it has to be a style that works for you.
Mm-hmm.
I have no closing comment.
And I'll just add as a final thought is that when you're seeking feedback and you're getting people to, read over your business plan, make sure you go to people who will give you honest feedback. I mean, so just think about how many times you've gone to someone's house to eat and the food wasn't good, and you say, oh, this was great, right? You don't want that to happen. You want go to people who will give you real feedback where they tell you, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't think will work, or I wouldn't buy it. I mean, you want real feedback. I mean,
I'm not inviting you over for that.
Now,
no, I'm gonna give you. It was great.
give your mentor a job too. Say, after you take me apart, please help put me back together again.
Yeah, right.
Because you don't want a mentor that's going to just beat on you and then say, good luck.
I
right?
think we have a couple of mentors here, right? Who here is a mentor? So we've got 2, 3.
Russell?
Okay, 4. So, I think now's a good opportunity, just in terms of Mixer to get together with those people and start asking them questions and try and develop those relationships.
Can I add something there?
Sure.
Yeah, just to calibrate a little bit. This information has been incredibly good. I really appreciate what you put here, and you did a great job, buddy, putting this together. This is really good. For the tire cage competition, you don't have to turn in a 25-page business plan, okay? but you will probably be beaten by somebody who has a 25-page business plan. Okay, the whole idea of Tiger Cage is that you actually go through this process. You come out the other end with a viable business, and you've actually learned and you've developed something, and you're also geared to be able to go and you go into the Auburn Opelika startup community and actually start a business. And so you'll need a playbook. It's just like when we get ready to play football this weekend. There's a big playbook, okay? But they're not showing the whole book on every single play, right? So you're gonna do the business model canvas, which has got these components in that. That's what's being asked of you from round one in Tiger Cage. But in order to even get it down on that canvas, you need the content. And
so
I challenge you to.
On that.
Go.
My advice would be have the main line part of your story and your presentation be kind of tight, but you can have attachments with supporting material for when the cows come home.
Right.
Yep.
Just don't drag somebody through that A to Z. Have 5 or 10 pages that are the A to Z part of your story, and then a set of appendices or supporting material attachments that go. And it wasn't uncommon for us, depending on the amount of money we were trying to spend, to have 100 pages, right? But the other thing I'd say is be as flexible as possible when you go into that presentation, and be prepared for however the judges want to approach this. Be prepared for somebody to say, I read everything, now I'd like to ask questions.
Cami, Lou, thank you very much for coming.
Thanks. Good luck.
So you were the point.
Get a microphone so.
My mic wasn't on. I'm sorry for you. Okay, so when you go to the webpage, you'll see that it's a platform we call Pitch Burner, and it's asking for those 3 things round one. Okay, and everybody will be evaluated on those 3 things: the 3 slides, the 1-page business model canvas, okay, and a 200-word essay about your idea. You're trying to engage in that one lap around the Indianapolis 500 with those documents, so that the limo stops and the people open the door and they say, "We want to talk to you more." All right, so you're into the next round then, okay? And that's why you want to really make sure you get this content that was described to you so well, and also focus on hooking up with a mentor to be able to review your plan, because the success is that the door opens and they say, "We want to talk to you more." You need more than your 3 slides, your 1-page business canvas, and your 200 words. Okay, that's when you need that additional content. So plan for success. Build it now. Be prepared. That's also where you'll go to find the content to put into these 3 little deliverables for round 1, and then you'll be well on your way to go through the second round. Okay?
Tell a little bit. The second round is more helping mentorship, more development. So you don't have to have the whole thing figured out.
No, technical issues, market issues, creativity issues, all different kinds of questions. The whole idea from getting through this first round, getting the second round, is then we purposely match you up with a mentor that's focused in your market area, focused on areas that you're looking for. If you've got gaps in financials, if you've got gaps in presentation, what can we do to help you get the resources to advance that? Okay, to give you the unfair competitive advantage going into the next round. Okay. Good point. Good point.
So I mean, you got to do well enough to hopefully get through to round 2. I mean, right?
Yep. That's the key. I mean, just doing the minimum, and not, and when they open the door, they just say, okay, get off the track, let somebody else in the car. That's failure, right? You want to open the door, and we need to talk to you more. You've got something. You've got something. And I can assure you, there are resources at Auburn, and there are people in this community that want to see and support your launch of your business. If you've got a real market, if you have a real solution, if you solve a real pain problem for a customer, and you can do it profitably, there are people that want to work with you on that. Okay? Is that fair? Any questions from anybody?
War Eagle.
War Eagle. Okay. Jillian?
I just wanted to share these resources. Can you get this for the people? This is my email address, so you can send me an email if you have any questions, and I can try to set you up with the right people. We also have a Twitter account, tigercage_AU, and it's checked constantly, so if you have questions, you can tweet at us. Follow us. We keep you updated. We also have a sign-up sheet in the back of the room for those of you that are here. If you'll make sure you sign that before you leave, just so we have that as a resource for us. And the last thing down here is the website. It's Auburn's landing page for Tiger Cage, and all the information that you need is here. It's harbert.auburn.edu/tiger-cage, and on that website is a link to PitchBurner where you enter your submissions. And if you haven't played around on PitchBurner yet, you can create an account and save it and come back later. You don't have to do it immediately. You have until November 12th to do those submissions in PitchBurner, but I would go ahead and get familiar with that. If you have any questions, email me. Okay.
Are Auburn Montgomery students eligible to help with this?
Yes.
I remember my team is. Okay.
Yes. But at least one member has to be Auburn main campus. Yep.
Well, Auburn student.
Student. Yes, student. Yes,
right?
student. Yeah.
You got to have one of these that's active for this semester.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Anything else? There are some mentors that showed up tonight that want to interact with you. We can stand around as long as you want to answer any specific questions.
Can I just? Well, just one before we stop. These recordings, we're recording the next 3, this session and the next 2. So if you know somebody that's interested, these will be available for anybody. They're open access. So if you want to re-watch them yourself, or tell your buddies or somebody else about them, and so pass the word around. This stuff will be available. We're going to stop the recording now, and the mixer part can begin, but just realize that we'd love for you to be here in person, but if you can't, there'll be access, but let your team members know if they couldn't come that they can watch what happens, all right? That's it. We're done recording.